Welcome to Chasing Green, where I'm about all things duck hunting. We got a good one for you today, buddy. I actually recorded today's episode for my podcast, which comes out every Tuesday. It's called the Chasing Green Podcast. You can find it anywhere. I'll have it linked down below. But the conversation was so good. I had special guest Jimmy Muller, the creator of Muller Chokes, who is just an absolute genius when it comes to ballistics, ammo, chokes, guns. He's been shooting his entire life. He created his own chokes. He was an aerospace engineer. He has degrees in all kinds of stuff related to this. That conversation was so good, I had to drop it here on the main channel. From what makes a good choke to 20 gauge versus 12 gauge, what makes a good ammo, what's the best steel shot to choose from. This is an absolute choke and ammo masterclass. You're not going to want to miss it. Also want to let you know that my guide service Prairie Drifters is about 80% booked. So if you want to get in on chasing green style hunts, if you want to hunt like you see on the channel, you better get with me now because it's booking up fast. I appreciate all of you who have reached out and who have booked already. This is going to be a really fun adventure. I'm looking forward to it. I've still got a date or two left in November, a date or two left in December, but I've got a few options left in October, which that's going to be a really awesome time frame. October's before a lot of states even open up, so if you want to get your season started early and have a good shoot on some early migrators, get with me for the October hunts. We've still got a few dates left there. It's gonna be really fun. You can check it out at huntprairiedrifters.com. I'll link it down below in the description. But with that, there's so much to learn from today's episode. Let's get Jimmy in here and get started. Well, Jimmy, it's good to have you. I appreciate you taking the time to join us. You're just a wealth of knowledge, so we're gonna jump right into it. How did you get started with Muller Chokes? What took you down the road of creating your own chokes?
Yeah, Jake. So back in 93, I wanted to become a better wing shooter. So I basically joined Sporting Clay Shoot. I went in, shot it, loved it. And I said, you know what? I've got to buy the best of everything. So if I miss, it's my fault, you know? So I went in, I bought an over and under shotgun. I bought a nice shooting vest, bought shooting glasses, and I said, hey, man, I need some good choke tubes, right? So I went to the biggest known choke manufacturer at the time. I bought 2 modified chokes because people were telling me, hey, man, just buy 2 modified chokes and just shoot everything, right? A little more false information at the time, but I didn't know better at the time. So I was shooting a fixed full choke. So I went and I bought two Briley modifieds and extended and put them in my Browning. And I went out and I shot paper because, you know, up until what I've been talking about, nobody knows any different. So you just go shoot paper. And one of my chokes patterned like a skeet pattern that was like all over the paper. And the other one was like a full choke. And I'm like, oh no, they marked the chokes wrong. You know, one must be like a skeet and one's a full choke. So I went and I mic'd them. And surprisingly, they were 20 thousandths from my bore. And I'm like, wait a minute, those are both modified. That's impossible. How could I get these patterns, right? So I'm like, oh no, my barrels are bad. So I pull the chokes out of the barrels. I mic my barrels. They both mic the same. They're both 742, right? And I'm like, man, what is going on? These chokes are both 20 thousandths from my bores. They're both 20 thousandths constriction. So I went, pulled them out, shot paper with no chokes in the barrel at all, just threads, because I figured my barrels were extremely different or something. Well, both barrels had the same point of impact and they both patterned the same. So I'm like, wait. So I put the chokes back in, repeat the process, different ammo, different distances, got the same results. So I make a long story short, I ended up buying 8 more. And I finally got 2 to pattern properly. One of them, I had to put black magic marker on it. I'll never forget it. Because in one barrel, the point of impact was 6 inches high and left at 20 yards. The other barrel, it happened to be good. So I had 2 chokes out of 10 that patterned pretty good, but the point of impact was off on one, so it had to be in one barrel only. So I went in the shop and I measured every geometry you can imagine, right? Cylindricity, straightness, roundness, concentricity, squareness, surface finish with a profilometer and, you know, looking at everything. And surprisingly, Jake, the geometries in the chokes were entirely different. And I found that that was actually what created the patterns, not the exit diameter. So when I learned that, I'm like, oh my gosh, a choke's not a choke based on thousandths of an inch constriction or exit diameter. It's about the geometry in the choke that creates the patterns. It was that drastic. So then that led me into, a dumpster of worms, down a rabbit hole, 2.5 years, 12,000 patterns on paper, mud, water, live birds, clay targets, you name it. And what I learned was that geometry was critically important, not only for the choke tube itself, but also for the gun that it was going to be in. Because when I created a certain geometry and put it in the gun and got an amazing pattern with this ammo, when I did that same geometry and put it in a different gun, it was entirely different. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to lead into something huge that seems to be endless. And it really was. So fast forward from 1993 to today, I'm still creating different geometries for each gun, different ammos. Every time a new ammo comes out, I retest it. Every time a new gun comes out, I retest it because it's that different.
You say that when you created yours, you went to each individual gun, you try to pair it with as much different ammo as you could. How is that different from the other companies? Are they just making a choke and then changing the threads for every gun and basically not switching anything else on it?
Yeah, Jake. So what I learned back then was that's exactly what companies out there are doing. They basically create a choke. They don't look much into how each one patterns differently in different guns or with different ammo. They basically give them a certain taper length, a certain parallel length, and then they just go with the old traditional, in my opinion, obsolete methodology of thousandths of an inch constriction. They put 5 thousandths at skeet, 10 thousandths improved cylinder, 15 light modified. It's done in 5 thousandths of an inch increments. And the problem with that, Jake, is if you just take two examples, if you take a Beretta mobile choke gun or a Benelli Standard or a Benelli Cryo Plus, which are anywhere from 719 thousandths to 724 on the barrel bore diameter, we'll call it 720 for a round number. And then you take a Mossberg 835 or 935 Ultimag, it has a 10 gauge bore on a 12 gauge gun, which is 777 thousandths of an inch. Okay. Massive, massive variation. But if we just go with the common guns, the 720 bore Berettas and Benellis, and you go with the 745 Brownings and Winchester SX4s and stuff, which are an Invector Plus choke or even an Invector DS choke. The Browning is a 745. The Benellis and Berettas are 720. Simple math shows you that's 25 thousandths of an inch difference in the barrel bore diameter before you even put a choke in the gun. So how can you put 10 thousandths choke in both of those guns and tell me it's improved cylinder? You can't. It's ridiculous. One gun is going to be 710 exit diameter. One gun's going to be 735. So how can you say they're improved cylinder? You can't. It's not real. So what I did was I started realizing this, and I started taking the chokes out of all guns, shooting paper with no choke at all, then putting choke in it, changing geometry, changing exit diameter, and seeing how they reacted. Then once I perfected the geometry for each and every gun, then with one ammo that I felt was the best in the industry, most consistent, I then went and took every ammo in the industry and shot it and seeing how it affected. And what I learned was when I created this perfect geometry for each gun that I called GSPG, gun-specific patterning geometry, I found that even the crappiest patterning ammos patterned a lot better through my chokes. Now, what I tell people is if you take the worst patterning ammo in the market and you put it through my chokes, it's still going to pattern the worst, but it's going to pattern better through mine than any other choke. So that's what I created.
I found that to be true too. Finding the correct ammo for that specific choke has always been an important part of the equation. What do you recommend for your chokes? What is the best ammo through your chokes?
So with my chokes, and to be honest with you, Jake, with any choke, it's physics, right? So what I found to be the best is like if you're shooting steel shot, 3-inch, ounce and 3/8 at 1300. And if you could shoot slower than 1,300 feet per second, your pattern actually becomes even denser and even more uniform due to physics, Newton's third law of physics, right? Faster starts out, the faster it slows down, the faster it spreads out. So when you have several hundred BBs in a shot shell. If you push it really fast, meaning anything faster than 1,300 feet per second, regardless of material, doesn't matter if it's steel, bismuth, lead, heavy 13, heavy 15, TSS 18, it doesn't matter what it is. The faster you push it, the faster it starts to spread out, the more trouble you have creating an efficient pattern. There's no need for hypervelocity. What I explain to people is speed does not kill ducks. It killed your pattern and your shoulder. And it also killed your wallet. So back, not to get off the subject, but going back about 13 to 15 years ago, if you look back when, ammunition like a box of 30-06 went from $10 a box to $65 overnight, when we had that huge lead increase and metal alloy increase, you can target that same exact time when the ammo companies started taking pellets out of the shot shell and adding more powder and screaming hypervelocity killed, speed killed slogans, and they laughed all the way to the bank at our expense. Pellets are what kill birds, not speed. And when you take pellets out of a shot shell and you put more powder in and speed it up, the only thing you're doing is hurting your patterns, hurting your distance, handicapping your distance, and beating yourself up for no reason.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest pieces of game-changing advice I've got in the past several years. You actually turned me on to that, which we always knew back in the day, with Winchester drop locks, those heavier payloads smash mallards. Like, it was just a lot better. And like you said, the whole industry got away from it there for a long time, and it's real hard to find heavy payloads in 3-inch steel.
It is.
And only a few companies make it. But before we change subjects, I'm a total believer in what you're saying as far as the velocity making the patterns worse. But is there any specific evidence that you've seen that showcases that, whether it be through pattern testing or like what have you seen other than the law of physics that shows you that that's the case?
So I'm glad you asked that, Jake, because all these years we talk about patterns. We could talk about this for days, literally. So everybody shoots paper, right? So paper is one-dimensional. It's two-dimensional if you include where the pellets pop through the back of the paper, right? But for argument's sake, it's one-dimensional. So the only thing you know by shooting paper is where your point of impact is. Now, point of impact is important. The shotgun's got to shoot where you're looking or pointing, right? It's not a rifle. We don't aim a scope. We don't aim iron sights at the target. We look at the target, we move to it, and we kill it, right? We will always see the barrel. We will always see the end of the gun, but we don't look at it, okay? Our eyes, our brain will always see it as a reference, but 110% of our focus is always on the target or the bird. And our hand will go to where it needs to go, right? So knowing that, it's obvious that a gun has to shoot where you look or where you're pointing. So gun fit, okay? Shooting paper will show you point of impact. You bench rest, you shoot, and then you freehand and shoot, and you see if you're making error, if your mount's bad, if your mount's consistent, how you're handling the gun. That's all paper shows you. The second thing paper shows you is if you have one projectile in the shot shell like a slug, or if you have 600 projectiles in a TSS load of, let's say, number 9s. What that paper is going to show you is every projectile or pellet in that shot shell is going to go through the paper, but you don't know how it got there or when it got there. Okay, you don't see any of that. So if your shot string is 6 feet long versus 50 feet long, looks the same on paper, right? You can't see it. If you shoot a target or a bird, a decoy, a bobber, a lobster pot buoy, done all of that. If you shoot it on the water, which is a horizontal plane, just like in a cornfield, if you shoot that target and you have a very long shot string, you're going to have pellets that look like a string of spaghetti or a torpedo that scatter a very thin, long line through that target. You are very, very lucky if you can put 1 or 2 pellets on that target at even 30 yards with a good choke with that ammo, okay? But if you take that combination and you have a 6-foot or a 9-foot long shot string, It's like dropping a pancake on the target. It's like throwing an M80 in the water. It's an explosion. The bird is dead one shot. So you can't tell me that shot string doesn't matter. It matters critically. In the air, it may not matter as much because on a 30-foot shot string, the front pellet to the back pellet passes the target in 1/100th of a second. So theoretically, you're only killing the bird with the front pellets anyway. Yes, the back pellets may also hit the bird, but the front pellets are what matter, which is why I always teach everybody you've got to learn how to shoot. Go practice on sporting clays so you understand lead on a target. Because if you hit a bird in the back end, it doesn't matter if you're shooting a 30-06 or a shotgun, it's not going to die right away. I don't care if it's TSS or steel. But if you're on the front of the bird and you're putting pellets in the head and neck, the bird's going to die, regardless of whether it's steel or TSS. So this is a big part that people miss. So if you take, let's say, 5 number steel 4s and you put it in the head of a bird, it's going to die just as well as if it was 10 TSS pellets, okay? And I think that a lot of people have gotten away from that. Like 88% of people, last time they did the study, 88% of duck hunters shoot steel shot, okay? I know bismuth has made a big impact on the industry. I know that TSS is a new big thing. I know heavy shot, heavy 12 is a big thing. It's been around a long time. The problem is a lot of people can't afford some of that stuff, so they stick with steel. The problem, still congested from shooting so much in Argentina, sorry. So the problem is all the people that are shooting, or I shouldn't say all, but a lot of people that are shooting steel shot are being told that you can't kill ducks with steel shot. They're telling people that you can't shoot past 25 yards with steel shot. That's all false information. The reason that that's been spewed forward for so many years is because people back then used fixed choke guns that blew patterns in steel. They used steel shot that had bad payload. They used wrong velocity. They used way too big of a shot, which led to no pellets on the bird, just big gaps of air. Okay, it's like when you shoot a BB at a duck, right? Good luck trying to hit it if it's past 40 yards because the spaces between the 90 pellets and the shot shell are huge, okay, regardless of choke. So you'd be better off with a steel number 4, okay, because you got a lot of pellets, no spaces. You're hitting a bird with a lot of pellets. So there's been a lot of false information spewed forward, and a lot of people that use steel shot are suffering because of that false information. They're using too big a pellet because they think they need the energy to kill a bird, but they're doing the opposite. You should be using a smaller pellet with way more of them. They're using too light of a payload. They're using too fast a velocity because people say you've got to push steel at 1,550 feet per second to be able to kill a bird. This room I'm in, it's about, 1,000 square feet, maybe a little bigger. If I had everything that I shot with a Daisy Red Ryder BB gun at 350 feet per second, you could fill this room with it. Okay. So you can't tell me that you need 1,500 feet per second to kill a duck with steel shot. It's absurd. Back when I was doing a lot of gel testing for penetration, when Remington came out with their 1,700 hypersonic loads, I said, I really need to see what the deal is. I may be crazy with this whole physics thing, but this makes no sense. I mean, that ammo was splitting Wingmaster receivers, okay? Solid steel machined receivers in Remington 870 Wingmasters. Their Remington ammo was splitting receivers. I'm like, I'll never shoot it, but I'm going to test it, okay? So I took some of that ammo, number 4s. I took some Kent 3-inch ounce and 3/8 at 1,300. Remington Nitro Steel, 3-inch ounce and 3/8, 1,300, Winchester Dry Lock, and Rio Blue Steel. Those were all 3-inch ounce and 3/8 steel number 4s at 1,300. I took the 1,700, and then I took another company's 1,550, okay? Went out to the testing grounds. I put a block of gelatin up that was 8 inches square. I put it out at 50 yards, okay? I shot the Remington 1,700. I fired 5 shots in order to get 2 pellets to hit the block, okay? Then I went back and I shot the other shots. One shot, I had 15 pellets in the same block. Same choke, same shot size, same everything except slower velocity. So immediately I was like, well, that's eye-opening, right? And all 4 of the other ammos did about the same thing. I went and looked at the penetration. There was a 1/4 inch different. The 1700 penetrated a 1/4 inch deeper on average, a 1/4 inch at 50 yards. The problem was I had to fire 5 shots to get 2 pellets to hit the block. So you mean to tell me a 1/4 inch penetration at 50 yards is going to make a difference between a kill and no kill? No. But 15 pellets on the bird versus maybe 1, that's going to make a difference.
Right. So with the payload, heavier payload, yes, that's better. Slower velocity, yes. Why not just bump up to a 3.5 and get that really heavy payload?
So then we get into bore diameters of shotguns and payloads being too heavy, right? So if you're shooting, let's say, in a Benelli or a type bore Beretta that's got a 720 bore, and you're shooting a steel number 2 at 1 3/4 ounces, chances are it's not going to pattern very well because you've got too many pellets and too big of a payload going down a very small pipe. But if you take a Browning with a 745 bore, you can shoot a much bigger payload and get a phenomenal pattern because the bore diameter is bigger and it gives you more volume area for the pellets to fit through. That also goes back to choke geometry, right? You can't put the same choke geometry, meaning taper length, parallel length, gasket clearance, surface finish, exit diameter, overall length. You can't put the same thing in a 745 bore when you've got this versus a 720 bore when you've got this. It just doesn't work. Okay, it's too abrupt or it's not abrupt enough, whatever. So these are all things that nobody talks about or teaches. So people just go out and buy whatever ammo they think is good, and then they don't do good in blind, but their buddy's smoking them. And they don't understand why their buddy's smoking them using the same ammo. Well, that's why.
Man, there's just glass shattering in my mind right now because I've been trying to understand this for years. I mean, we've all known, this choke may work in this gun or this ammo may work in this gun. Like everything likes something a little different. And I never really had it explained to me in a good way why. But that makes total sense. It's because all the bore diameters are different in all the different shotguns.
Yeah, so if people would really try to, with 2 3/4, just talking steel now, because if we change material, payloads, velocity, all that, velocity is consistent across the board, whether you're shooting steel, bismuth, lead, tungsten, heavy 12, 1160 to 1285 is the sweet spot. Regardless pellet material, pellet size, doesn't matter. It's physics, okay? The moment you exceed 1300, things start to go downhill, okay? 1350, okay, you can get away with it. The moment you exceed that, it starts to get bad. The moment you exceed 1400, it goes really bad, okay? So if you have a 2 3/4 inch shell for steel, 1 1/4 ounces is ultimate. It's the most you could fit in it, but it's ultimate. 3 inch, 1 3/8 ounces, 3.5 inch, 1.5 ounces to 1 5/8 ounces. Okay. Those are ultimate. Now, when you get into bigger shot sizes, things change, right? Because bigger shot size sort of correlates to heavier payload, even though you got less pellets, because those big BBs need to be funneled down through a choke. So then you need to open up choke. You need to change geometry. Okay. Velocity is constant. But pellet material, pellet size, and payload, that's not constant. You need to figure out what is best. And I've talked about all this. It's out there. And we could talk days about this, literally. But if you're going to shoot small steel shot or small pellet size, you could shoot a much tighter choke and get a laser beam, okay? Provided your velocity is what we talked about. If you're going to shoot a big pellet, like let's say a 2, a 1, a BB, a triple B, you need to open up the choke because it's going to react a lot tighter because the pellets are taking up more volume. Round balls stack like a Ballantine ale. They stack like a triangle, okay? And that's how they go down the barrel, like a triangle, okay? I've drawn it. I put videos out. So it doesn't matter how small a pellet is, the BB, or how big it is, it's still going to stack that same geometrical way. So you need to understand that. And without getting too scientific or blowing your mind or making you dizzy, I've already created the best geometries for your gun in my chokes. And the reason that I only have 3 constrictions is because you only need 3. Most times you only need 1, okay? Because you're not usually shooting a steel number 7 and then shooting a steel number 1 at the same scenario, okay? So you match your ammo to the game you're hunting, the distance you're shooting, and the choke you're using for that appropriate, type of hunting. And that's what it comes down to. So if you're shooting big steel shot, you want my decoy. If you want to shoot mid-range size, like number 4s to number 1s, you want my passing. If you're shooting small stuff and you want to shoot laser beams really far, like lead turkey loads or TSS, you shoot my UFO if you're shooting past 60 yards. So the decoy, choke, and the passing are what 95% of duck hunters want for steel shot, bismuth, heavy 12, and TSS.
So out of all your testing, all the customers you talk to and mess with on a daily basis, what's your number one steel shot recommendation with your choke? If you're going to give somebody one recommendation, what's the best that you found?
So if you're going to hunt puddle ducks, you use my decoy with 2 3/4 inch, 1.25 ounce, at the velocities we talked about, with a steel number 6 or number 4. And that's going to be everything inside 35 yards, even geese, okay? People think you need big pellets to kill geese. No, you don't. You're still hitting them in the head and the neck. It's the same as a duck. If you're going to shoot them in the breast, well, yeah, you need to hit them a little harder, right? Think about all that. Then if you're going to hunt sea ducks, where you've got big, tough birds that can dive 100 feet deep, that can come up 100 yards away after one dive, you need to put as many pellets on them as possible and kill them. And you're usually shooting big open water, so you may be shooting further. Then I suggest my passing. And I'm going to couple that with like a 3-inch, 1 3/8 ounce, number 3 or 2 or 1 at the velocities we spoke about. And that's it. Very simple. Same thing with geese. Geese fall into the sea duck category. They're a big, tough bird. So basically it's pretty easy. If you're shooting over decoys, decoy choke. If you're taking passing shots, passing choke. UFO, if you're not shooting tungsten at distances beyond 60 yards or lead turkey loads beyond 40, you don't need the UFO. You don't want it either. If you want to shoot a lot of snow geese or big geese as far as you possibly can with steel shot, use a 3-inch, 1 3/8 ounce number 1 at 1300, and you're going to be amazed at what it does. So, Rio Blue Steel makes it. Remington Nitro Steel, I think, still makes it. Winchester Drylock still makes it. So number 1 is ultimate for your farthest shots on steel that's possible. BB is worthless. I don't use it. I have a lot of guys that argue with me with that. The only reason they argue with me is because they're shooting stuff closer than they think they're shooting. And if you ever sat in a blind, Jake, with a lot of people, a lot of hunts, and people using BB or triple B, every single bird that hits the ground is running around with a broken wing. Why? Because they only hit it with 1 pellet, because there's 90 pellets in the shot shell. And we all know, based on all the testing Joel has done, all the testing I've done, we always talk about 100 pellets in a 30-inch circle density. If you only start out with 90, what do you expect your pattern to be efficient-wise at 50 yards? You're already inefficient or deficient before you pull the trigger. How can you expect it to be good at 50 yards, which is where you would want a BB to start to perform? You can't, so don't use it.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm always, it's very hard to put duck hunters in these little categories, because I see this in deer hunting too, bow hunting. It's like, yeah, if you get that perfect scenario, that setup will work great. But I've always tried to be the most versatile. Like, yeah, I'm going to shoot a lot of ducks at 20 yards, but that cripple that's on the water out there at 40 that we knock down, or this group's that's not wanting to finish today, like, it's just very rare that you're getting all your birds in this perfect scenario. So I've always tried to go for, as much versatility as I can get. And I found, 3-inch number 3s to be that good versatility. I can shoot them far, but it's not going to kill me if I have to shoot them at 15 or 20. I can still get a good pattern that close.
I'd agree. And if I'm shooting, this is just myself, my rule of thumb, And because I can and I pay attention to it, if I'm going to shoot a duck inside 20 yards, I'm going to head shoot it. So it doesn't matter what I'm shooting, because to be honest with you, like Robertson's used to say, Phil, Jeff, Jace, Jason, Phil are always the top shooters in the blind. That's why you always see them on the ends of the blind, right? And they always told me, because I made them custom chokes quite a few years ago, they always told me they wanted the tightest pattern possible because they head shoot everything, because they eat everything. And those guys do, so because they can and because they do. So, I always think about that. If it's close, I'm head shooting them. If I miss the first shot, I shot in front of them. And then when they're exiting, then I just kill them. It's not a big deal, because I'm not going to blow them apart anymore, because I let them get out. My wife says to me a lot of times, we'll have an old squaw or an eider or scoter or even a mallard or black duck. They'll stuff us and they'll come into the decoys close, and I won't shoot. I'll let her shoot. I won't shoot. I'll wait till the bird is going, flared, and on its way leaving, and then I'll just kill it. And she'll ask me, why didn't you shoot? I'm like, because I don't want to blow it apart. I'm not going to miss, but I'm going to destroy the bird. I can't mount it. I can't eat it. I'm not going to shoot it. So I just let it go by. And when it's 30, 35, 40 yards away, then I kill it, So what I do is I usually shoot my passing choke, because I'm usually shooting big water, and I'm usually shooting far shots, because I let everybody else empty their gun, and then I pick my birds and I kill them. So that's why I usually shoot my passing choke. And what I'll do is I'll literally just pick my shots, and I will adjust my ammo. I'll usually just have two. I'll adjust my ammo based on what I'm hunting, how I'm hunting, what I'm shooting, how the birds are working, and if the weather changes. If I started and the wind was blowing, 5 miles an hour, and in a couple hours it increased to 30 knots out of the east, well, I'm not shooting the same ammo, maybe not even the same choke, So I adjust accordingly.
Right. Well, I want to kind of pivot a little bit in the same vein, but on a different subject. Like I was saying, I'm hoping for plan A, but I'm always prepared for plan B. I'm coming prepared to shoot the plan B shot.
Yep.
There's a huge fad and trend moving towards 28 gauges, sub gauges, 20 gauge. If you had the same 28 gauge or same 20 gauge shell as you did in a 12 gauge, explain to me. I hear some people making this case that ballistically they're the same. I'm not a believer in that at all. Tell me how you can compete with me if we both have the same shell.
So basically it comes down to distance, Jake. So if you are shooting a 410, 2.5-inch shell with little tiny amount of BBs, right? And you're shooting a 10 gauge with 2 ounces of shot, all right? Same velocity, same pellet material, same pellet size. It's going to hit the bird just as hard at the same distance. The difference is 2 ounces of shot versus a 1/2 ounce of shot. You have to be able to still put that 100 pellet density inside a 30-inch circle on the bird. So it doesn't matter what gauge you do that with. So if you can do it with a 410, you'll kill them just as good as a 10 gauge. The problem is if you only have a 1/2 ounce of pellets at 40 yards, it's pretty darn hard to put that many pellets on the bird, because you can't keep them together that far. So that's the big difference. So getting back to your question, is a 28 gauge as ballistically capable as a 12 gauge or a 10 gauge? No, it's not. Inside 35 yards, yes, it is. Okay. So again, it goes back to shot material, shot size, right? Pellet count. What I talk to a lot of people about in my videos lately is pellet count. Again, pellets are what kill birds. If you have 1 pellet versus 600, it's going to be a whole lot harder to hit them, isn't it? So it all comes down to pellet count. And the reason it comes down to pellet count is because how many pellets can you put on the front of the bird to kill it at a given distance? And that does not matter if it's a BB gun, a pellet gun, a slingshot, a 410, or a 10 gauge. It's the same exact thing. You need to put the pellets on the front of the bird to kill it. So If you're shooting a 3/4 ounce load of 28 gauge versus an ounce and 3/8 of 12 gauge, is it as capable at 25 yards? Yes, it is, because you're going to be able to put all the pellets on the bird. Are you going to be able to put 3/4 of an ounce of pellets on the front of the bird at 60 yards with a 28 gauge versus an ounce and 3/8 of a 12 gauge? No, you're not. So therefore, it's not as capable of a 12 gauge. So there's a little bit of a false pretense of that situation. I have shot and I have won a high overall champion in many sporting clay shoots, shooting a 410 and a 28 gauge. I've done it many times. Okay. I've got trophies to prove it. But my 12 gauge is a lot easier to do it with. Okay. Because you got a lot more pellets, which means you've got a much bigger margin of error. And let me talk about that 1 second really quick. So one thing I've been teaching a lot, we all talk about that 30-inch circle, right? And we talk about 100 pellets inside that 30-inch circle to be dense enough to kill a bird. Well, here's the problem. People don't understand that description. Everybody talks about a 30-inch circle. Well, I don't care about the 30 inches. I'm shooting a shotgun, and I'm always shooting more than 100 pellets, which means I want everything more than 100 pellets outside the 30-inch circle to give me a bigger margin of error. So if I've got 101 pellets, I want 1 pellet outside the 30-inch circle. If I've got 600 pellets, I want 500 of them outside the 30-inch circle to give me a 48-inch or a 60-inch usable pattern. Okay? We all shoot a shotgun at a moving target to give us a margin of error. So why do we keep talking about 30 inches? I don't care about 30 inches. I care about the biggest pattern I can achieve and still get the 100 pellet density or spacing that's in that 30 inches, but I want it as far out as I can get it. And that's why I shoot the heaviest payload I can get and the smallest pellet size I can use. That's it.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And that's always been my strategy. I want the most amount of margin of error. I want the most amount of power I can get. That's why, I've guided before and hunted with a lot of clients and other guides who are using sub gauges. And when you start chasing a cripple down without a dog, you learn real quick who the bad dude on the block is, like what setup's the best. And yep. I've just seen how much powerful a 12 gauge is over a 20 or 28, even when they're shooting boss or TSS or whatever.
Yep.
Like I can shoot cheap steel and still be better because I have so many more pellets and so much more power. And it's obvious when you're chasing a greenhead down and he's 40 swimming away from you.
Yep.
And so that's always my thinking. If you find ducks that do perfect every time, you let me know where they're at because I hadn't found them yet.
Let me talk about something else that you just said, and it just jogged my memory about something else, the testing that I did. If you take a 12 gauge and you put a 3/4 ounce load through it versus a 28 gauge with a 3/4 ounce load, the 28 gauge now becomes more ballistically capable than the 12 gauge because a 3/4 ounce load going through a big pipe like a 12 gauge is not efficient whatsoever. Okay. Through a 28 gauge, it's very efficient. So you see how pellet count, I don't like to talk about payload so much as pellet count, because pellet count is what matters. If you have a 1 ounce lead slug in a shot shell, it's 1 slug. But if you have a 1 ounce lead number 8, it's a whole different ballgame. 1 ounce lead 6 is 225 pellets. Okay. So 1 ounce lead 6, 225 pellets, which is more than double what you need in a 30-inch circle versus 1 ounce lead slug, 1 hole. Right. Which one's going to be easier to hit a bird? So that if people start to think of it with those two extremes, I think that it'll open up their eyes to what I'm saying.
Right. Well, I want to, and this has just been an amazing wealth of knowledge. I've always said this statement here, though, and I'd like to get your opinion on it and just some tips in general. Chokes are awesome. Shells are awesome. Having that right combo is definitely important. But in my experience and opinion, the most important thing is good fundamentals / gun fit, point of aim. Like
how to shoot.
If you're not on, it don't matter what you're shooting, period.
No.
Like these chokes aren't going to take a bad shooter and make them good. It'll just make a good shooter great.
That's correct. So what I've always told people, Jake, is if you can't hit the duck, you're not going to kill them with anything, right? So that comes down to practice on season and off season, which is critically important. Now, before I go that route, understand that if you have the wrong choke or if you have the wrong ammo or the wrong combination, you could be right on the bird and not hit it or kill it, right? So that's what I've corrected, because I've seen it with many of my students shooting, hunting. I've seen them with the right choke constriction, with the right ammo, be right on the bird, not touch it, whether it was a clay or a duck or a pheasant. The reason is they had a fly through. Pellets never hit the bird because the choke sucked, right? So you know, this whole statement, oh, put the muzzle in the right spot and the duck will die. That's totally false. That's a cop out because people don't know better. That is not true. So the most important thing before you get to that point is make sure you can shoot, right? So we spend all this money on truck to pull an expensive boat with the beautiful trailer, with the gorgeous hand-carved decoys, with my $5,000 shotgun and my expensive chokes and my TSS, but I never went out and pulled the trigger until opening day. Do I expect to do the best I can be? No, it's not going to happen. If I don't pick my gun up for a few months and I pick it up, it feels foreign to me. And I shoot a lot. Okay, I know how to handle a gun. Yes, I could pick up a shotgun, go out opening day and do fine on ducks, okay? But it's because I'm a master class shooter and I've shot a lot, right? Shot my first duck in 1975 when I was 6 years old, right? So I've been shooting a lot, never mind all the sporting clay competitions and everything else. But what I do is even in the off season, when I'm tuna fishing or striped bass fishing and it's a sunny day out, it's raining, it's blowing, it's snowing, I'm out there shooting sporting clays, practicing, okay? Usually once a week, okay? If I have a really busy week, it may be once every 2 weeks. But when I go out, I'll shoot 500 targets. I'll shoot 1,000 targets, okay? All year. During duck season, I'll go shoot, okay? I get days when it's raining hard and blowing. I go out and practice because I want to make sure that my hat, my glasses, my gear, I want to make sure things work. So when I go out and compete or I go out and hunt, I know what I'm wearing is going to be the best it can be, you know? So all these things come into play. Do you want to be at the top of your game and be the best you can be? Or do you want to just be a weekend warrior and go out and have fun with your buddies and maybe shoot a duck? There's different levels of all of that, okay? When I pull a trigger and the duck doesn't die, I'm surprised. It shocks me. When I pull a trigger, I expect that duck to die. And that doesn't matter if it's at 10 yards or 125 yards. If I pull a trigger, that duck's going to die. And if it doesn't, it sets me back. I'm like, whoa, and then hopefully I'll kill with the next shot. Okay?
I mean, most duck hunters haven't been taught I was like this. I mean, I was never really taught how to handle a shotgun. I had to kind of figure it out. You know, it's not like I had a class that said, put it to your shoulder, mount your cheek on the barrel. I just like figured it out through years of doing it. And I think that's most duck hunters. Have you got any tips for as far as getting the proper fundamentals down? Because that's where I see like some problems happening. You're not mounting your gun properly every time. Like it's not coming to your eye every single time like it should. That's kind of hard to master, especially with different clothes, different positions.
Yep. I actually just had this conversation with a friend yesterday about, you know, how to help his daughter shoot better in the duck blind because, you know, basically she water swats everything because she can't hit anything moving because they're too fast, right? So what I always teach everybody is a target's not fast unless you start your gun too close to it or you let it get too close to your gun. The reason that happens is because we're not efficient in mounting the gun because we haven't practiced it. So number one, if you have no idea how to mount a gun properly, hire a shooting instructor. There's many good shooting instructors in the sporting clay field that will fix you in an hour what would normally take you 10 years to learn on your own, okay? So I always tell people, hire a shooting instructor in the sporting clay field. They will teach you from the basics all the way up in a very short period of time, and they will help you tremendously. But let's say you don't want to do that, you don't know how, you don't have time, whatever. The best thing to do is in your own home. So obviously make sure the gun is empty and safe, right? Find a mirror and just mount the gun in a mirror and look at what's happening. Am I cocking my head to line it up? Am I leaning far? Am I standing straight? I mean, there's so many things you could learn just in your own home. The other thing is you could take in a 12 gauge, you could take a mag light that takes AA batteries, put a little bit of electrical tape around it, and it fits right into your barrel perfectly, and turn it on, and you can mount to the corner of where your walls meet the ceiling, and you could just mount to that corner and see what you're doing with the muzzle. Am I dipping it? Am I tipping it? Am I mounting and the gun's way down there? What am I doing? You'll see what you're doing. So there's a lot of things you could do to help yourself. Back when I competed a lot, every night before bed, I would put 5-pound wrist weights on my hands and I would mount my gun 100 times every night before bed. Because what that ensured me was I would never have a bad gun mount and I would be consistent every time. And in sporting clays, it's the same as hunting. How many times have you had your gun standing up against the gunnel of the boat or in the blind, and you're sitting there talking, all of a sudden a duck just stuffs you right from behind? Well, I'm going to kill that duck, okay? Everybody else just sits there and watches and is like, oh, man, that was a Drake widgeon. Wish I could have saw it coming. I already killed it. It's laying in the water. Because I've practiced mounting. So I can mount very quickly and very efficiently. If you cannot mount a gun properly and efficiently, you're never going to be a good wing shooter. If the duck comes in and lands on the water, you could pick it up and aim it like a rifle and kill a bird. You have plenty of time. If you're walking in the woods and you're grouse hunting and a bird takes off and flies behind an apple tree and you've got about 2 seconds to kill it, your mount better be pretty quick and efficient or you're not going to have a chance. So these are all different levels of hunting. So yes, you need to practice your mount because it's critically important for any type of wing shooting. Doesn't matter what kind of game it is. If you can get your mount consistent, your shooting ability is going to go through the roof very quickly. And hiring a shooting instructor is going to help you tremendously very quickly for a very small amount of money compared to what it would be if you tried to learn on your own.
Gotcha. Well, that's certainly helpful tips. One more question I got for you, and this is just a curiosity question. You've been around guns a long time. You shot a lot, and I've just recently went through this problem. Have you noticed the decline in gun quality over the past few decades?
Yeah, it's been tremendous, sadly. So when COVID hit, all of the gun manufacturers fell way behind. Some of the gun manufacturers are 1 million guns behind production, let's say, okay? Some are a little less, some are even more. Well, there's no possible way that they could manufacture all of those guns in their plant, in their state, in their country, okay? So what do you do to fix this problem? You job it out. Where do you job it out? Certainly not to another company down the street because they've got the same problem you do. You send them off to Turkey, okay? You have your barrels made in Turkey. You have your guns made in Turkey. You have them made in Yugoslavia. You have them made in Hungary, Turkey. You have them made in all different countries, Russia. And then because you're jobbing them out, you're having multiple sources of production and you're starting to catch up. So sadly, this is what's happened in the industry. Even good gun manufacturers and countries that we know of are sending their stuff out overseas to other cheaper sources for high production so they could catch up on back order.
Yeah, I've noticed even, you compare like 90s guns, even Beretta, Benelli, like their metal just seems to be different now, just lower quality.
It's because all of their guns were made in-house and all of their metals were sourced from the same foundries. Now they're not. Those metals are sourced from the country they're having them made in, whether it be Turkey or somewhere else. The materials are bought from that country with that inferior steel and metal or aluminum that we talked about earlier. The contents are different. Back when I used to make my Featherlight chokes, when I was developing them, what I would do is I would have my Alcoa material that I bought, my aluminum Alcoa. Then I would buy some other material from another country that was supposedly the same exact, on the certs, same percentage of chromium, nickel, whatever. I would put them in a cutoff saw. 7/8 diameter aluminum bar. The Alcoa would take, let's say, 4 seconds to cut through, and the cut lines from the saw were very, very fine, and it was shiny. I put the other material in, right through like butter, 1 second cut time, and it looks like lead. Not the same. Sorry. Right. Okay, so this is the problem that we're having. A lot of people aren't, into metallurgy, or people aren't into machining. Okay, that's what I've done all my life. I'm a metallurgist. I have a heat treating degree. I'm a master tool maker. I did aerospace defense manufacturing. That's what I do. So I've seen it. I've experienced it. And it's a tremendous amount of difference. And that's what we're getting today, unfortunately. Now, there are still some guns that are being made where they're supposed to be made. Unfortunately, it's the higher level ones. Not the $600 guns, not the $1,000 guns. I always tell people, if you're going to hunt, if you can afford it, because there's a lot of people that can afford it, but they still choose to buy a cheap gun. It boggles my mind. They'll wear $1,000 Sitka waders and they'll buy a $500 gun to go hunt. Anyway, I don't get it. The more money you spend on a shotgun, the higher quality you're getting. You're getting what you pay for. So if you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a duckwater boat, and you're going to go buy a $100,000 Ford F-250 Tremor to pull it, and you're going to buy hand-carved decoys, go buy a $3,000 shotgun, please. Stop complaining. Go buy TSS. Quit complaining that you can't hit anything. Go get shooting instruction. Invest in what you're doing, in the right things. Don't invest in the wrong things. I could wear old, beat-up Ranger waders, and I could go get to the decoys with a 9-foot pram with oars. Because I could shoot, I'm going to have a great hunt. But if I spend all that money and I'm buying a cheap shotgun or junk chokes or junky ammo, what am I doing? It makes no sense whatsoever. I may look good, but I can't hit anything.
Right. Well, Jimmy, man, I appreciate it so much. You're just a wealth of knowledge. You put out a lot of content yourself on a lot of these topics. Where can people find that content?
So I have on Facebook and Instagram, of course, because it's all the same now. But on Facebook, I have Jimmy Muller page. I have Muller Chokes hunting page. I have Muller Chokes competition page. And I also have the Muller Chokes hunting fan page. I've got a great website, mullerchokes.com. That's MULLER, chokes.com. And then we have a YouTube channel. I'm putting out shot cam videos, trying to teach people and help people so they could see leads. Shot cam is a great learning aid and helps you a lot.
Well, that's awesome, man. I definitely recommend. I'll link everything Jimmy has down below in the show description so you guys can find it if you like. I suggest following him. He's always giving great information. I learn something every time he speaks. And I'd love to have you on again in the future, Jimmy. There's so many more questions I could ask you, but I thank you for taking the time today. If you haven't got a Muller choke and you're looking for an aftermarket choke this duck season, check out Muller chokes. They are amazing products. And Jimmy will take care of you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time here on the Chasing Green podcast.